What would you do if the people who threw you in a pit and sold you to die suddenly bowed at your feet, begging for food? Would you take revenge, or would you do the unthinkable?
You are spies. You have come to see the weakness of our land. You will not leave this place until your youngest brother comes here.
In this epic conclusion, witness the ultimate test of a fractured family. You will see a desperate journey back to Egypt, the trap of the hidden silver cup, and the most profound moment of forgiveness in human history. If these stories connect with you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. It means the world to us. Now, let's begin. Joseph, the favored son of Jacob, was violently betrayed by his jealous brothers, stripped of his colorful coat, and sold into brutal Egyptian slavery. He survived false accusations and years in a dark royal dungeon, never losing his faith. Finally, God gave him the power to interpret Pharaoh's terrifying dreams of a coming famine, instantly elevating the forgotten slave to the second most powerful man in the empire. The dreams were entirely true. For 7 incredible years, the land of Egypt exploded with unprecedented abundance. The harvests were so massive that Joseph stopped trying to measure the grain. He built towering storehouses in every city, gathering food like the sand of the sea. Joseph was no longer a forgotten slave. He was Zaphnath-Paneah, the governor of the world, dressed in fine linen, riding a royal chariot, and commanding the respect of millions. He had a wife, and he had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, bringing deep joy to his heart. But then, the skies turned to brass. The rivers shrank. The 7 years of plenty ended violently, and a devastating famine swept across the entire earth. Nations began to starve. The ground cracked, and despair settled over the surrounding lands. Back in the dry hills of Canaan, the famine had a terrifying grip on Jacob and his family. Their crops had failed completely. The massive flocks they once proudly tended were growing dangerously thin. Starvation was literally knocking at their door. Jacob gathered his older sons around him. The old patriarch looked deeply exhausted, his eyes reflecting the desperation of their reality.
Why do you just stand here looking at one another? I have heard there is grain down in Egypt. Go down there and buy some food so that we may live and not die.
The 10 older brothers prepared for the long, dangerous journey south. But Jacob firmly held one son back. Benjamin, the absolute youngest, was the only remaining child of his beloved wife Rachel. The memory of losing Joseph still haunted Jacob's every waking moment.
Benjamin will not go down with you. If any harm should come to him on the road, it would break my heart forever. He stays here with me.
And so the 10 men set out across the scorching desert, joining massive caravans of foreigners, all desperately seeking survival. They eventually arrived in the sprawling, majestic capital of Egypt. They were directed to the central courtyards where the grain was being rationed and sold. Towering above the crowds on an elevated platform stood the Egyptian governor. He spoke with absolute authority, dictating the flow of life-saving food. The brothers approached, trembling with the exhaustion of travel, and threw themselves completely face down on the ground to show respect to the ruler. From his high position, Joseph looked down at the dusty travelers. His heart slammed violently against his chest. Even with the passing of over 20 long years, he recognized them instantly. There was Reuben, there was Simeon, there was Judah. The dreams from his youth flashed before his eyes. The sheaves of wheat bowing down, the stars dropping to the earth. It was happening right in front of him. The brothers had absolutely no idea who they were bowing to. To them, this was a terrifying Egyptian lord in royal makeup and golden chains. They never could have imagined that the boy they threw into an empty desert pit was now the second most powerful man on the entire planet. Joseph could have revealed himself right then. He could have ordered his guards to execute them. Instead, he decided to test them. He needed to know if they were the same ruthless, jealous men who tore off his coat, or if time had changed their hearts. Joseph kept his royal demeanor completely intact. He purposely used a harsh, commanding tone, speaking to them through an Egyptian interpreter so they would not recognize his native language.
Where do you people come from? You look suspicious. You are spies. You have come to see where our land is weak and unguarded.
The brothers were instantly terrified. Being accused of espionage by an Egyptian ruler meant certain death. They scrambled to defend their honor from the dirt floor.
No, my lord. We are completely honest men. We are not spies. I do not believe you. I say you are spies. You are looking for a way to conquer us while we are dealing with the famine.
Sir, please listen. Your servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man back in the land of Canaan.
The youngest is with our father today, and one of our brothers is no more.
The mention of their father and little Benjamin struck a deep emotional chord within Joseph, but he masked it with fierce intensity.
This is exactly how I will test your story. By the life of Pharaoh, you will not leave this place until your youngest brother comes here to prove your words.
One of you can go and bring him. The rest of you will stay locked in my prison.
Joseph ordered his royal guards to seize the men. They were thrown into the dark Egyptian dungeon for 3 agonizing days. It was a terrifying taste of the exact same medicine they had forced upon Joseph decades earlier. On the 3rd day, Joseph brought them back into the light. He offered them a slightly better deal, proving he was not a complete tyrant.
Do this and you will live, for I fear God.
Let one of your brothers stay here, bound in prison. The rest of you may take grain back for your starving families. But you must bring your youngest brother to me.
Thinking the Egyptian governor could not understand their Hebrew language, the brothers began to argue bitterly among themselves. The crushing guilt of their past had finally caught up to them.
This is a punishment. We are suffering all of this because of what we did to our little brother. We saw his deep distress when he pleaded with us from that pit, and we completely ignored him.
Did I not warn you? I told you not to sin against the boy.
But you would not listen. Now his blood is required of us.
Hearing their deep remorse, Joseph was completely overwhelmed. The royal act cracked. He quickly turned his back to them, walked away, and wept silently. After regaining his composure, he returned, pointed directly at Simeon, and ordered the guards to bind him tightly while the others watched in horror. Joseph secretly ordered his royal stewards to fill the brothers' empty sacks to the absolute brim with premium grain. But he added one extremely strange command. He ordered the stewards to take the heavy silver coins the brothers had used for payment and hide the money right back inside the tops of their sacks. The brothers loaded their exhausted donkeys and fled the city, leaving a bound Simeon behind. They were desperate to get home, but on their journey, when they stopped to rest at an encampment, one of the brothers untied his grain sack to feed his animal. He reached inside and felt something hard and cold. He pulled out his entire bundle of silver. Panic ripped through the camp.
Look! My money has been returned. It is right here in my sack.
Their hearts completely sank. They were already accused of being spies. Now they looked like outright thieves who had stolen from the second most powerful man in Egypt. They trembled with fear, wondering what God was doing to them. When they finally reached the dusty hills of Canaan, they poured out the terrifying story to their father Jacob. They explained the harsh governor, the accusation, Simeon being held hostage, and the impossible demand to bring Benjamin back. To make matters worse, as they emptied their sacks in front of Jacob, every single brother found his bundle of silver hidden in the grain. They all stepped back in absolute terror. Jacob looked at the silver, then looked at his remaining sons with a heart full of bitter grief.
You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is gone. Simeon is gone. And now you want to take Benjamin away from me too? Everything is completely against me.
Father, you can trust me with him. If I do not bring him back to you safely, you may put my own 2 sons to death. My son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left from his mother.
If any harm falls on him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow.
The argument ended, and for a time they tried to survive on the Egyptian grain. But the famine was relentless. The skies offered no rain. The earth remained cracked and dead. Eventually, the food ran out entirely, and the family faced the grim reality of starvation.
Go back down to Egypt and buy us a little more food.
We cannot go back. The man gave us a severe warning. He said we would not even see his face unless our youngest brother was standing right beside us.
Why did you bring this terrible trouble on me?
Why did you even tell the man you had another brother?
He asked us directly about our family. How could we possibly know he would demand to see the boy?
Send Benjamin with me, and we will go at once.
If I do not bring him back and set him safely before you, let me bear the blame before you forever.
Broken, defeated, and starving, Jacob finally relented. He ordered them to take the finest gifts of the land, balm, honey, spices, and myrrh, along with double the silver to repay the mysterious returned money.
May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you.
With heavy hearts, the brothers took Benjamin and began the terrifying trek back to the palace. When the brothers arrived in Egypt and stood before Joseph, the governor's eyes immediately locked onto Benjamin. Seeing his own full brother, born of the same mother, Joseph was flooded with an intense wave of emotion. He ordered his steward to take the men directly to his private estate and prepare a massive feast. The brothers were terrified, thinking they were being led into a trap because of the returned silver. But instead, Simeon was released to them, and they were seated at a grand banquet table. Joseph amazed them by seating them in the exact order of their ages, from the oldest to the youngest. The brothers stared at each other in complete shock. How could this Egyptian lord possibly know their birth order? And when the royal food was served, Joseph gave Benjamin 5 times as much as anyone else. They ate and drank freely, feeling a rare moment of relief. But the final, ultimate test was about to begin. The next morning, Joseph commanded his steward to fill their sacks with food. But then he handed the steward his own personal, highly valuable silver cup.
Take my silver cup and hide it deep inside the sack of the youngest brother.
The brothers left the city at dawn, feeling incredibly happy and successful. But they had barely reached the edge of town when the Egyptian steward rode up behind them in a furious dust cloud, shouting for them to halt.
Why have you repaid good with evil? You have stolen my master's royal silver cup.
What are you talking about? We are honest men. We even brought back the silver we found the first time. If the cup is found with any of us, let that man die, and the rest of us will become your slaves.
The steward began the terrifying search. He checked the oldest brother's sack first. Nothing. He moved down the line sack by sack, building the tension. Finally, he reached the youngest. He tore open Benjamin's sack, dug his hand into the grain, and pulled out the gleaming silver cup. The brothers screamed in horror. They tore their clothes in absolute crushing despair. They loaded their donkeys and were marched straight back to the governor's palace, like dead men walking. They threw themselves on the hard stone floor before Joseph.
What is this wicked thing you have done?
Did you not realize that a man like me can uncover secrets?
What can we possibly say to my lord? God has uncovered the guilt of your servants. We are now all your slaves.
No, I will not punish the innocent. Only the man who stole my cup will be my slave.
The rest of you are free to go back to your father in peace.
This was it, the ultimate trap. 20 years ago, they had happily thrown Joseph away to get rid of him. Now they were being offered a completely free pass to walk away and abandon Benjamin to slavery. But Judah, the very brother who had once suggested selling Joseph for 20 pieces of silver, stepped forward. His voice cracked with immense pain and raw desperation.
Please, my lord, let your servant speak.
You asked about our family, and we told you our father's life is entirely bound up in this boy.
His brother is dead, and his mother is dead. If I go back without him, my father will literally drop dead from grief.
Judah dropped to his knees, making the ultimate, selfless offer.
Now then, please let your servant remain here as my lord's slave in place of the boy,
And let the boy return with his brothers.
Judah's incredible sacrifice shattered every single wall Joseph had built. The governor of Egypt could not hold his tears for another second.
Leave this place immediately!
He yelled at the top of his lungs for every Egyptian servant and guard to leave the throne room immediately. Joseph was left completely alone with his brothers. The silence was thick and terrifying. Then, Joseph began to weep so loudly that the sound echoed through the halls and reached Pharaoh's household. The brothers were frozen in confusion. Then, the powerful Egyptian lord wiped his eyes, stepped down from his throne, and spoke in their native Hebrew tongue.
I am Joseph. Is my father really still alive?
The brothers jumped back in sheer absolute terror. Their minds could not process the impossibility. The boy they had abused, the boy they had sold, was standing before them, holding the power of life and death over their heads. They could not even speak a single word.
Come closer to me, please.
They slowly stepped forward, trembling like leaves in the wind.
I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt.
Joseph did not seek revenge. He offered them a perspective that completely redefined their entire lives. He showed them the majestic, sovereign grace of God.
And now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here. Because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. It was not you who sent me to Egypt. It was God.
He sent me ahead of you to make sure our family survives.
Please, don't carry this guilt anymore. Do not be angry with yourselves for what you did.
We still have 5 more years of famine ahead of us.
Joseph stepped forward and threw his arms around Benjamin, weeping loudly. Then he moved to each of his older brothers, the very men who had once despised him, and kissed them, shedding tears until every ounce of past bitterness was entirely washed away. Pharaoh received the incredible news and commanded the brothers to take royal chariots and wagons back to Canaan to gather their entire household. When Jacob saw the Egyptian caravans roll into his dusty camp and heard that his most cherished son was not merely alive, but governing the known world, his weary soul was completely reignited. The entire family migrated to Egypt. Joseph rode his chariot out to the lush region of Goshen. The moment he laid eyes on his frail, elderly father, he rushed towards him, burying his face in his neck, and wept for a very long time. The shattered family was finally completely restored. For 17 peaceful years, Jacob lived in the fertile land of Goshen, watching his family survive the global famine and multiply greatly. But eventually, his time on earth drew to a close. The old patriarch blessed his 12 sons, prophesying over the future tribes of Israel, and breathed his last. To honor his father's dying wish, Joseph led a massive, royal Egyptian procession back to Canaan, burying Jacob in the same ancient cave as Abraham and Isaac. But with their father dead, panic seized the older brothers once again. They threw themselves down before Joseph, terrified that he had only been pretending to forgive them for Jacob's sake, and would now finally unleash his revenge. But Joseph wept when they spoke to him.
Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God?
As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good.
To bring it about that many people should be kept alive, as they are today.
He comforted them, speaking kindly to their hearts, proving that his forgiveness was absolute and permanent. Joseph lived to be 110 years old, living long enough to hold his great-grandchildren in his arms. But as his own death finally approached, he gathered his family around his bed to deliver one final epic prophecy.
I am about to die, but God will surely visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. When God visits you, you shall carry up my bones from here.
He made them swear a sacred oath. Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. It is a stunning, quiet cliffhanger. The Savior of Egypt, resting in a box, waiting for the day God would return to set his people free, setting the ultimate stage for a man named Moses. The life of Joseph is the ultimate proof that heaven never wastes our tears. You might feel as though those closest to you have shoved you into a dark hole, or that you are stranded in the shadows even when you have walked faithfully. These heavy burdens might look like the final chapter, but they are actually the training ground. The very things designed to tear you down are the exact tools God will use to lift you higher. Congratulations on reaching the end of this epic movie. For completing the journey of Joseph, you have officially earned the Unbreakable Dreamer badge. To claim your badge and show you made it to the very end, comment Unbreakable down below. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to see the next story. God bless.